Well, good evening once again, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and this is Monday night, and that means it's time for McDuff and Nixon tonight. And we're going to spend the next hour with, I think, probably a very enjoyable conversation about whatever Garland's been studying. One of the things that I love about interviewing people is that they have time, they're looking at things that I'm not looking at, so I can get caught up on things. And maybe that's a good way to start. Garland, how you doing tonight? And what's your latest thing you've been looking into?
Well, well, John, one of the things I'd like to start off with is the what's happening in Saudi Arabia, briefly, but I think this is very, very important. And the discussion that I hear about it, I think is wrong. So I'm going to throw a different perspective. Okay, so. Everyone's familiar with the Jamal Khashoggi murder, where he was a Saudi Arabian, one could call him a dissident or something, but he lived in the U.S. He wrote at times for the Washington Post. He's a guy from one of the richest families in Saudi Arabia. People may remember his uncle, Adnan Khashoggi, who was the infamous arms dealer back in the 80s, multi-billionaire, spent unbelievable amounts of money. Well, that was his uncle. So he comes from a lot of money. But at any rate, so he was complaining about what the Saudis did. He was in Turkey. They told him he was about to get married. They said to him, well, you got to stop by the Saudi embassy to get some paperwork. He went there. Apparently they went inside. Apparently they choked him out and cut him up with a bone saw. So at any rate, it was an ugly situation. They sent a hit team over there to do the grisly deed. All right. The U.S. has kind of danced around on the head of that pin for quite a while because a couple of things. One is that the U.S. always claims to be, we're going around the world to stand up for human rights. And then like when it's Saudi Arabia or something, all of a sudden we turn a blind eye. Okay, so here's my position. Let's get to where we are today. Finally, the U.S. comes out with their report and it says, yep, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, the guy who's the de facto ruler of the country, Mohammed bin Salman, was behind the whole thing. Well, if there's just no way Saudi Arabia is the most autocratic, nation on earth. There's no way something like that happened if he didn't say do it. Okay. So then, and here's where I differ from so many people that I really believe in and respect, but I don't think they thought about it from this perspective. So this is what we hear. Why isn't the U.S. sanctioning Mohammed bin Salman? Oh, he's too close. If they should be sanctioning him, we sanction other people. Why not sanction him? So I'll sum that all my position all up by saying this. I don't think that the U.S. should sanction Mohammed bin Salman for this grisly deed that he's involved in. And as soon as I say this, you'll understand. Because I don't think we are the police or the court of the world. And since I don't already have a huge problem with us running around being the world's police, oh, we're going to punish you over there for doing that. Oh, did you punish the guy in this country? Oh, darn it, we forgot to punish him. We got to punish him. This metaphorical punishment that who punished the fathers punishing there's children, I guess by this metaphor, the U.S. somehow must be the father or God of the world or something. And we just go around and when somebody does something, well, we got to punish them. This crap is so pervasive in our society that I hear people that are anti-war, anti-everything, and people who will scream out, I don't think we should be the police of the world. We should spend the money on American citizens. And now they're calling for the U.S. to be the police of the world and to take action. Well, here's what I say. There's international bodies. If the U.S. wants to go to the UN Security Council or the International Criminal Court or some international body and determine what's what, fine. But as far as us independently saying, well, that guy's right or wrong and we have to punish him, we're not a court. We're not a judge. We're not the judge, jury, and advocate. And in my opinion, in the same way, I don't think we have a right to look at Venezuela and say that guy over there is the president and that person's not. I don't think we should be going around the world telling people what to do. We're not the world's police. I oppose the U.S. taking unipolar action on Saudi Arabia in any way, shape, or form. That's my opinion. And you don't hear that much. You hear everybody caught up in, well, we did this to this guy. Why don't we do that to that guy? And I say we shouldn't have done it to either one. Let American money, American effort, American energy should be spent on Americans. If we're helping an ally, if we're assisting someone and they ask for assistance, fine. But if, in my opinion, if they don't ask us to come to their country and do something, I just I don't think we should do it, particularly when we got people here who need a job, who need food. Our infrastructure is falling apart. People are freezing with no water. I think we need to spend our money, our time, our energy and on ourselves. And so that's the way what I think about that.
I hate to tell you this, but I can't disagree with a word you said. I completely agree with you. That's why I like so much talking to you, because you're a rule of law guy. You know, you're an innocent before proven guilty person, and you're a person that believes in the rule of law, and that's been my career. You know, it wasn't easy to get through Georgetown, and I paid my way through. I worked my ass off. I practiced law for pretty hard for over 25 years, and the idea of learning all that procedure and understanding the Supreme Court cases, and by the way, I've lost track of them by now anyway. But when you're on the cusp of it, when you're in the mix, and when you're doing the thing, you appreciate the fact that there's a system here, and we respect the system. And without respect for the system, then the whole thing falls apart. And that's what I love about your emphasis on, first of all, nation versus empire, because we can't just say, hey, we're going to be an empire. It doesn't say that in the Constitution. In the Constitution, it says we're a nation. Okay, it doesn't say we're an empire.
Right.
Now, British, they're different. They have an empire. Okay, and they run an empire, and they run it like an empire. And when they want to, they extend their empire right into our pockets and into our country, and do what they will with us, because in their kind of heart of hearts, we still belong to them. The banks, the city of London, and all them, the people that go to the Bilderberg conferences, the Trilateral Commission,
Davos.
Davos. That's the whole thing, is to draw the United States, along with the rest of the world, back under the umbrella of the British Empire. And that means adhering to their financial system and not our Constitution. And that's what's happening right now in every respect. From the YouTubes, tossing people out, Twitter, everything, because they say, well, we're a private organization. We don't have to obey the First Amendment. We don't have to follow freedom of press. We are a private. Well, that's what they are. They're corporations. They're multinational corporations. They're Silicon Valley, City of London, and Wall Street. And that triumvirate is what's running the financial world right now. I'd love to be able to say to Congress, why don't you guys decide where the money goes? But the fact is, they're not. They're handed a huge stack of paper that says, and they say, here, sign this. They're going to stay up all night and read it. No, because they have to sign it. They don't have any choice. They're going to sign it because it's been already dealt. The deal has been made. It's been sitting on the shelf waiting for the political time to hit. But when it's time for them to put the elite's agenda to work in the Congress is going to do what they're told. And they're not doing what they're told by us. They're doing what they're told by the big banks and the financial system. And that is where, that's the core of it. We have to find some way to grab a hold of our financial system and take it away from these private interests that are using it over and over again for private benefit. I completely agree with you about all of your legal points. I don't really have any particular sympathy myself for Jamal Khashoggi. I have no idea if he's even really dead. It's a grisly story, but I didn't see any pictures. I don't know anybody did see any pictures. It's kind of like maybe him and Jeff Epstein are sitting in a bar in Morocco, having Mai Tais. I really don't know, but I don't know if these people are dead. There's no proof. Have you seen a death certificate or anything? So, excuse me, I got a little cough. I don't tend to get too wrapped up in people overseas that. And golly, look at how rich they're, filthy rich people. That Adnan Khashoggi is one of the most vile and vicious arms dealers and drug dealers in the world that ever existed. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know it or not, but up at National Harbor, George Webb and I used to meet up there fairly often. And
Hmm.
one time, did you see the plane, the 747 that they brought in on a barge up the
No.
river? Well, I noticed this on the internet, and it was coming out of Rhode Island. It was on a barge. It's a 747,
Wow.
and they towed it on a barge from Rhode Island down the East Coast, up the Chesapeake Bay, up the Potomac River to National Harbor. And when this was going on, I said, wow, I got to see this. So I went out and I got pictures of it all the way up, There it is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the deal. So there it is going up on the barge. And George and I traced that plane. And, I traced that plane what is the one out in McMinnville, the one that flies the chemtrails. What is the name of that airline? Evergreen. It was an Evergreen Airlines plane.
Okay.
Before that, it was with Al Arabiya and Singapore Airlines. And it turns out that this plane was, in fact, one of the drugs and weapons planes.
Wow.
Picture it full of drugs and weapons going to wherever they needed to go. And they would pick up troops and everything else with this and other planes much like it. So we called it Khashoggi 1 because it was Adnan. You can trace it back to the time in the 80s when Adnan Khashoggi was running all of that stuff. So Jamal Khashoggi, tainted. Journalist, maybe. I think journalism is a cover. I think he's really is a dealer. He's a big time arms dealer. Is or was. I don't know which.
Well, and the thing about it is, here's the reality. We don't even know. That's a dangerous world they live in. You know what I mean? And the world they live in, they know it's dangerous and they understand how dangerous, and they live high on the hog and have all kinds of things, but they also understand it's a dangerous world. And so I'm like this. Again, I'm not in favor of anybody being murdered anywhere, but if there's a system of justice, look, he was murdered in Turkey, first of all, not in the US, in Turkey. Mm-hmm. So it's up for Turkey to figure out how. When I look at the way various countries work, here's an example, and I'll bring this up: Russia and China. What do you really know about their foreign policy? Do you ever see Russia and China running around the world saying we won't do business with that country because of human rights? Oh, we won't do that country because of corruption. Russia and China are two countries that basically say this: if you'll do business with us, we'll do business with you. And whatever you're doing, it's your sovereign nation. If the UN or some organization that Russia or China is involved in says we're going to look into this and that, as part of the UN Security Council, they will fulfill their international duty. But when it comes to their day-to-day business, they do business with who's going to do business. The US, we've got I can't remember if it's a quarter or a third of the entire world right now, of the entire world, is under unilateral sanctions from the United States, just from a business perspective. And I'm a far left-leaning guy, right? But I'm just a pragmatic person. Just from a business perspective, imagine US companies, a third of the world they can't do business with. You are severely hampering your own economy by using the dollar as the leading edge, as the sword of the empire. So now you're going around, really, we're going to make you pay. We're saying we're going to sanction these companies. What we're really saying to American companies, hey, you can't do business with him, or them, or them, or them. And I'm not amoral by any stretch of the imagination. I just look at it like this. We have rules. As you said, you're an attorney, you understand. We got rules. We have a way of doing things. If somebody's accused of something, we've got a method, we've got an avenue to address that. And to me, the avenue is it's just for any number of reasons, but one of them is it's just too expensive. We cannot afford as a nation to support our own people. When we look, all you got to do is look around. Our infrastructure is falling apart. You go to these other countries, they got these beautiful new airports and ports and roads and buildings and all these kinds of things you come here and this place is a shambles. And it's not like we couldn't afford it if we didn't spend everything on the empire running around the world. So I always get back to the issue of empire, because that's what hurts the people, because our money is used to maintain a system that doesn't in any way benefit us. Instead, we're going around making a lot of noise. Just now, anyone can look this up. Recently, the Pacific Command asked for $27 billion. Apparently, they want to put these missile rings, all these surface-to-surface missiles around China so they can threaten China. Now, why couldn't you use that $27 billion for small businessmen and women in America, people who you closed down the system? And it cost them, people who worked their entire lives to open a business, worked hard. I know my mother was a businesswoman. My mother had a school bus, started with nothing, had some school buses and did quite well, right? So you're going to close people who spent their whole lives busting their butt to get a business so they could feed their family. You're going to close everything down, close them down, have some PPE program, and all the money goes to the rich people. $27 billion for war. Why not? Look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a retired law enforcement. I've got money coming in. I can at least survive, right? No matter what, I can at least put food in my mouth. People who lost their jobs, people who lost their business, their hard-earned business during this thing, you know what Garland would say? Look, I don't have to get any of it. Take that $27 billion and give it to these people to try to keep their businesses open, to give them an opportunity to feed their family. But to waste it because we want to harass a country. And here's the truth. China has made it clear, hey, we don't want any problems. China said, let's try to work out our deals. Let's try to do something diplomatic. And the U.S. doesn't want to do that. But then again, when we talk about that $27 billion, I'll end up with this. The problem with that is that $27 billion that will be supposedly to, menace China, whatever, right? If Raytheon, who might I add, isn't it interesting? They want a missile shield when we got another Secretary of Defense from the biggest missile builder in the world, Raytheon. But when we I got be an ADT person. I got mixed up. It'll come back to me. But you get my picture. Take the money, give it to the people here. That money to harass a country that doesn't even want to be harassed is nothing but a money laundering operation. It is not really a military operation. It's really a money laundering operation. So they can take $27 billion and they can give $10 billion to Raytheon and $10 billion to Lockheed Martin and $3 billion to BAE and $2 billion to this person. You know what I mean? It's a money laundering operation. It could cost us everything because they're harassing nuclear countries.
I think, well, there's a lot there, and let me try and give a little bit of perspective from my appreciation of what I've studied over the past 3 years doing this work that I'm doing. The idea of the military being a nation-building operation was never the case. It was completely, the military's very, very simple. If you got a war, I got an army. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you got an enemy, if you tell me to go kill him, I'll go kill him. That's my job. But after I kill him, I want to go home. I want to have my steaks. I want to kick back. I want to enjoy my family. I want to make babies. I want to be a human being when I get home. Okay. Well, that is not the way that we do business anymore. What we have done is created a military, and this I get from two of my favorite books. One, Fletcher Prouty's The Secret Team, where he in the 70s is telling us, hey, the military is now going into the nation building, city building, health business, and providing people with sanitation, clinics, health clinics, all that stuff. That sounds wonderful. But what is it really? What it really is the foot in the door to control third world countries. You come in with the Peace Corps and all the, the great medical equipment and stuff like that. But then the next thing you know, the World Bank is in and the IMF. And, it's the old Do you want the bullet or the sack of money? Which one? You can have either one you want. Just tell me which one you want, the bullet or the sack of money. Okay, I'll take the sack of money. Thank you so much. Okay, and then you work with Mr. Rockefeller and Chase Bank and all of those good people. But that is the way that they get hold of the resources that the people of the country really should be developing themselves. So if our foreign policy makes any sense, it's based upon the idea that, hey, we came out of World War II. We're like 6% of the world's population, but we're using 50% of the energy. We own 50% of the assets. We have, all the technology, and we are the big gorilla in the room. So now that we have all of that advantage in peacetime, this is where people like George Kennan, Henry Kissinger, these people get busy and they start thinking, now, how can we maintain what is really an unfair balance in our favor? And the only way that they could do it would be to go out and take over country after country after country. So now we're at a point where it's almost like the mythical 3 world wars from the Albert Pike letters, that they've had their First World War, they've had their Second World War, and now they want to start a Third World War so that they can consolidate even more. And whether they go after Russia first or China first doesn't really matter, because eventually they're both going down. And that is what we're doing when we're pressing up against them. We're pressing against China. We're pressing against Russia. We're pressing in Belarus. We're supporting this Navalny guy who is an agent for the British Secret Service, who, comes out and gets all the press, kind of like Jamal Khashoggi. And, hey, he's a good guy. He's a Democrat. He says good things, And so we should support him and try to oppose Putin for locking him up. Well, it's just another reason to oppose Putin. It's another reason to put pressure on what you and I would call a very stable, independent country. But that is the bottom line, is that. And then the other book that goes along with this is Blowback by Christopher Simpson. And that book gives us the real idea of, after World War II, the CIA, or the OSS, which became the CIA, and the British intelligence worked together, not only to bring paperclip Nazis into this country to build things like atomic bombs and biological warfare, but also working together to control all the economy and the nations of the world. And that has been done by the use of the stay behind Nazi armies, the Operation Gladio. And this kind of brings me to one of the questions I was going to ask you about, is that, are we, and this is my suggestion, is that we are now at the point of what's the Doug Valentine's Phoenix program. And the Phoenix program, which I know you're familiar with that book, and I talked to Doug on my show about 10 days ago. And
oh, wow.
Oh, just a great show. You got to see that one. It was Saturday, about 10 days ago. Great show, 7, 8, 9 days ago. Anyway, Doug, in his Phoenix program, the main question that he left of this book, and it was written almost 30 years ago, was, what is going to happen when the Phoenix program comes home to roost? And that's what I think we're looking at now with this totalitarian stuff. With the COVID is a way to get it going. It's a way to get us locked down. It's a way to get rid of the small businesses. It's a way to make more and more people dependent upon that government handout, so that if without the government, you have nothing. And the destruction of local economies, forget about small towns. I mean, we're not going to have people that can even run a dry cleaners or a bus. I mean, if the kids aren't going to school, you don't even need bus services like your mom did. This is the COVID, whatever you think about it, real bioweapon or whatever you think of it, it has provided exactly what the World Economic Forum wanted, and that is a opening door to a lockdown society, a society in which that they can say, no, it's not safe. You can't go out anymore, and there's nothing we can do about it. And at that point, I think, they've got facial recognition. They've got, dossiers on every single person in this country by now. That's what they're collecting with these big computers in the mountains, these big, huge computers that we learned about from Snowden. They've got us all doxxed, to put it mildly. So yeah, they've done that around the world. They've eliminated the people that would like to do the good things. People like in Haiti, for instance, that, oh, can you have good government in Haiti? Not while the United States is your neighbor. I don't think you can. I think that it's the same in Puerto Rico. You're always going to have some corruption. And if somebody gets in there that's a real populist candidate, they're going to get assassinated. That's the way it is. Who's doing it? Well, it's secret groups that work with our intelligence agencies and the British intelligence agencies. So yeah, I would love to say, hey, United States is a nation, and we're bringing on. Let's bring them all home. Let's bring the troops home. What a great idea! Just bring them all home. We'll give them a great big party, and then we're going to change the rules so everybody that's in the military is given a leg up in starting their own business. And let's get a lot of small businesses going. If you figure out how to drive a car with French fry oil, well, we'll support that now. We're not going to stop you. Any ideas you guys have, that's what America's for. It's for individuals to exercise their reason, the brains that God gave us to improve life, to make those unfortunate people, not have such a hard time, to take pity on the folks, that there's no pity in this government. This government doesn't have what you're talking about. There's no will to do it. I mean, I'm sorry. I love the idea of going to Mars, but for Christ's sake, why can't you take that, 10 or 20 billion dollars and feed the poor people? Go to Mars next year. Let's feed people this year. It's just not there. It's just not there because it all is tied up in the military industrial complex. They own the senators, they own the congressmen, and until we educate the American people, 4 years ago, everybody was saying, drain the swamp, drain the swamp. And they got Trump elected on the idea of, hey, we're going to drain the swamp. I felt the same way when Obama was elected. I remember in 2008, I said, oh, we're going to close down Guantanamo, and we're going to stop being the world's bad guy and trying to be the world's policeman. But that's the bottom line. If we don't keep doing what we're doing, then other countries are going to get the advantage. And those people right now who think that they own everything and are sitting pretty, they might have to worry a little bit about, whether their investment in Nicaragua is really going to pay off, or whether they, ought to pull their money out of Belarus, or, all of that stuff that they're invested in. They're invested in it because they know that the U.S. military is going to protect their investments. So that is my perspective of it. It's not that we can't do it if we want to. It's that the people that are in the power have rigged it in such a way that there's no practical hope that we can change this ponderous, flailing empire, into a respectable member of the community of nations. That's what we got to do. It's the hardest task I think we could take on, Garland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is, and what they've created systems that work specifically for them and not for us. When we talk about nation building, right? What are we really talking about? We're talking about the U.S. goes into Afghanistan and blows up a whole bunch of stuff. And then somebody comes in and builds a dam. We blew up a dam, somebody comes in. But who? You know what I mean? It's Halliburton. It's one of these. So what happens? So they go in and blow things up, and then they say, we're going to build schools, and we're going to build nurseries. We're going to build this and this. Now, kind of wish they build them here, but unfortunately they don't. If you're going to build those things, how about build them in America? I think that's what we're saying. We're fine. You want to build schools? Sure. Build them in Schenectady. Build them in Idaho, not in Kabul. But what happens? They have these money laundering operations, and then the military says we need to build a new hydroelectric dam right there, and they spend 3 times what it really costs. If it was going to cost them 100 million to build the dam in here, they'll build it for 350 million there. They split all the money to all of their buddies, and you know what happens? The Taliban blows it up again. That's another 300 million in the back pocket. So the great thing about having a war and an enemy around is they can do money laundering through their corporations and their friends. They can blow stuff up. They can do even more. And then eventually they can leave. And who cares? There's other countries that you got to go blow up and rebuild this stuff. They want to overthrow Venezuela right now and steal the Venezuelan oil. A country that size, without all that, with all that oil, can you imagine the money laundering that would go on in Venezuela if they were able to take a country with all of that oil? So that's the game. It's like, the lion goes in and kills and eats the part of the carcass, and then after that in come the hyenas, and then after that in come the vultures, a little smaller and smaller, but everybody's getting a piece of the carcass. And everybody knows the Hunter Biden story in Ukraine, which we were told you're not allowed to talk about that. I was reporting on that 2.5 years ago. I was reporting on that, of the Hunter Biden story, saying I don't know about Biden because he's got all of this stuff, Ukraine stuff going on, right? But what happened? The U.S. overthrew the government of Ukraine. The Bidens, there were people connected to John Kerry, Pelosi, people connected to McCain. I mean, both Mitt Romney. They went in. Now they've overthrown this country. There's oligarchs there. There's money to be made. They all went in there, took a bunch of money. That's specifically why when Donald Trump said something about Biden getting money illegally there, that's why they went after him so hard. Because it was like, that's something you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to talk about the truth, that we're overthrowing countries. And then we're using that broken down country now as an excuse to launder money. We pump all of this U.S. money into that country. And once it gets into the country, we divide it amongst all of our friends and buddies and get some back to it and do all of our dirt. And that's what we're looking at. So, the problem is, it would be one thing if we were just talking about an empire that wants to go overthrow countries and steal their resources. Yes, we want to do that. But now this regime change operation, this U.S. institution of regime change has perfected it. Yes. So now we not just overthrow the country. We don't just steal their stuff. Now we send in all of these U.S. corporations and we call them contractors. And they're contracted to do God only knows what. We have diplomats that have to drive around in this country that we've overthrown. So now we have to have companies to come in to protect them and we pay them a fortune. So everybody's going in here. Eric Prince, the guy with Blackwater, but that's only one of them. There's tons of these different companies around here that just go to these countries. So think about how rapacious that is, that this country has you might as well call it an industry, a regime change industry, where we go in, overthrow the country, and a lot of people make a fortune. And that just reflects overall our foreign policy is an industry. It's an industry to money launder money. Money launder to these various military corporations. It's an industry because every time we start a war, these media ghouls get thrilled and start smiling and they get higher ratings and they make money. So sadly in America, there's a lot of money to be made after regime change and war. But the problem that people like you and I have, and the problem that the everyday person has, somebody who grew up like me, I've said my mother was a business person. But you know what my dad did? He was a longshoreman. He put on a hat. He went to the docks. He loaded the ships. He worked in the cold and the heat. People like us who grew up in an America where people worked for a living and got their hands dirty and put on hard cats and did things like that actually have some concern for the everyday American, not these top 1%ers that are just using these violent, vicious institutions and games to go around the world and make a fortune.
And if anybody has a question of what has any question as to how it is that our members of Congress become millionaires, multimillionaires, even billionaires, while they're sitting in Congress at a fairly reasonable salary, Garland just told you the answer. It's because they all get a cut. This is all just like British Empire 101, right? You go out there, you're the general that figures out how to get control over the land, And then the company comes in and builds the pipeline. And because, you did this for them, they give you maybe 10% of something. And that adds up over your career as you get your little percentage of this pipeline and that takedown and this country's oil and that country's gold. And, just take another dictator down if you need some more money. And, that's how this corruption has happened. It's through the military industrial complex. Sadly, it's through NATO, and NATO is something that we've all been taught is the greatest thing. It's going to protect us, from the Russians. NATO is where these guys make the deals. These high up generals and admirals, they make deals all the time. And it's all about what are we going to do with Ukraine after we take it down? After we own the government, who's going to get the railroad system? Who's going to get the television system? Who's going to have the right to run the banks? And it's all parceled out like dealing out cards at a card game. You get this, you get that, you get that. The people of the country, well, they don't have any say in it because they don't have any money. They don't have anything to deal with. So this whole business with Ukraine has been going on since before World War II. But right now, we're at a point once again where the United States has a very, very strong interest in using Ukraine to irritate Russia, to make the Russians sweat, to make them feel that, the people in Ukraine may revolt, well, actually, they gave them their revolt, didn't they? We overthrew the government already. I don't know how Biden's got through that election. They had people like Peter Schweitzer and yourself and so many others. Have so many ways to catch the Biden family in their corruption, but it didn't hit the radar screen. People didn't pay attention to it. And it was all just so well managed that we've now got this zombie-like character in the president's chair. Can't even get it together to give us a State of the Union, but they preferred him to Orange Man. And so, that's what we got. We got the zombie.
Well, the thing about Biden is this: he's such a tool for the machine. They're happy. Trump was not a good steward for the empire. He didn't do all the things they want. He gave them a bunch of the things they wanted, but but they don't want a bunch of the things that they want. They don't want 98% of the things. They don't want 51%. They want everything. So Biden is just the kind of guy that the system likes: a nice hollow shell, a nice empty pipe, and you can pump anything you want through an empty pipe. You can push oil through it. You can push water through it. Any kind of fluid you want goes through an empty pipe. So Biden's and Harris are just the kind of people that they love. He will do what he's told. They already know that after 47 years. Harris is a climber. Everybody, it's fairly obvious. She's a climber. She wanted power, and she was in the right place at the right time, and they threw it in her lap, which means she doesn't have any power. Kamala Harris doesn't have any power. They're training her right now. If Biden craps out tomorrow, this is what you're to do. Simple as that. So to me, I don't even get like, oh, Kamala Harris is good or evil, or she'll do this or that. No, the system will do exactly what it wants to do. And Kamala Harris, if she's the president or whatever, will be there to shake her head. Yes, system, move forward. And that's ultimately what they want. Ultimately, they want to ensure, first and foremost, that we don't get an opportunity to choose who the president is, who our leaders are, anything of that nature. I do think there's some, for all the difficulties that we're facing, I do have a little bit of optimism. I'm looking forward to the 2022 primaries, even though, as you know, I'm an independent. I have no faith that either of these parties means anything good for the people. In fact, I'm at a point now where I'm like, there is no part of this empire that means good for the people, citizens of the empire. Yeah, because that ain't how empires work. But I do feel that in the primaries next year, that going into the next couple of years, you're going to see some things happen. You're going to see some people who normally wouldn't get elected, who leave the system. The system are going to just be aghast at the very sight of them, are going to start to get elected. Whether that'll make a difference or anything or not, I don't know. But I think that's a positive thing. I think ultimately what's going on, in the same way that the British Empire crashed when the pound sterling bit the dust, I think, it'll probably take something like that for us, and we are clearly in moving in the right direction to ensure that the dollar ain't worth a piece of toilet paper by the time those idiots we have get finished with it. And here's the other thing, looking at the long term, if you think of long-term fiscal health, right? Again, and you take what people can take what they want of this. This is not an endorsement. This is not good, bad, or indifference. Right now, China is not in debt at all. They don't have a debt. Right now, or barely. Right now, at the beginning of the pandemic, Russia, which bought a lot of gold, Russia bought a lot of gold. They had a pretty good size wealth fund. They had enough money when this thing started to pay all the debt, both corporate and government debt, and still have enough left over, still have money left over. So they were you call that fiscal conservatism, not what the crap they call fiscal conservatism here. You call that fiscal conservatism. Garland looks at his money and says, I don't want to do anything stupid because I'll be spending a little too much. I'm going to put this credit card away and keep my bill. That's fiscal conservatism. They use those terms to fool people here in America. Okay. So if you think about this, where we are now, for all the noise we're making, long-term health, where's Russia and China going to be 20 years from now, and where are we going to be? Where are they going to be 10 years from now, where we're going to be? We are up to our ears in debt. We're pretending like nothing matters anymore. Like we can just do whatever we want to around the world. We're going to be the most powerful economy. As our economy is in the toilet, our government is pretending as though our economy is great. They're going around the world still with the same war crap or telling people to do, when the fact of the matter is, at home, we don't have the financial wherewithal, the social or political wherewithal. Think about this. And people don't, people go to war with this country or that country. When the U.S. was attacked by Pearl Harbor, there were people volunteering. I'm going to fight back. Give me a musket so I can charge the line. Right? They felt that their country was attacked, and they felt that they had to defend it. FDR was president at the time. There were steel mills, and people were doing whatever they're going to do. Right? But at any rate, they felt that their country was going to attack. They were ready to fight. As divided as our country is, it is deliberately divided, right? We have a whole generation of people in their 20s who have been totally screwed. The shutdown shut everything down. A lot of them had jobs in like restaurants and things, like all gone. We have a generation of people who are just like, where's the future for me? Everything of mine is gone. In 1 year, in weeks, they shut everything down for like 12 weeks. And my whole future, I don't have anything. I don't even have a present. Right. So right now, Joe Biden, you go out and start a war. You think those people are going to be rushing to put on a uniform and fight and defend the bunch of neoliberal globalists that aren't looking out for them now? The younger generation is going to be like, well, you're going to have to throw me in jail or do whatever you want. I'm not fighting to defend this system that's screwing me over. And I truly believe that we have a generation of people, and they know they don't want a war. That if these idiots go start a war with country X and start saying to the young people, yeah, go fight for us, they're going to say, why should we fight? You guys are the problem. You made our lives miserable. Now we got to go die on some ungodly desert sand somewhere just so you can get richer, and we never got anything out of it. And after it's done, we still ain't going to get anything out of it. I don't think the U.S. could really prosecute a war, because I think half the people that they would ask to go would say, forget this, I'm not going. You're going to have to throw me in jail. I may be wrong. What do you think about that assertion of mine?
I agree. And that was killed in Vietnam. It was the Vietnam War that killed people's gut reaction of, uncles, I got a job to do for Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam needs me. I'm going to go. Young people like my grandfather and my father, a war comes, and there's something instinctual in the American that says, I'm going to defend my country. I love my country. And that is gone. it's basically, the veterans still have it. People, that have family relations with folks that are, military. They will tell you, I love my country. I love the flag, and very patriotic people. But they are on the outs. Matter of fact, these are the ones that went down to the mall on January 6th to try to support President Trump's efforts to get a hearing, a free and fair hearing on the election fraud charges. These people are getting overwhelmed by the masses of young people who are being taught to demand, what they want, and if anybody stands in their way, to cancel culture them. That person's in my way. Let's cancel culture them, which I'm making into a verb because it's so chilling, the idea that these folks, if somebody doesn't do what they want, then they're going to take away their job. They're going to take away their career. They're going to try to mess up their lives. They're going to make it impossible for them to make a living. This hardball left wing, it's not the way people on the left are supposed to think. You're not supposed to be like trying to tear people down. You're supposed to be trying to build consensus so that everybody's boat rises, instead of seeing somebody that's got something that you want and turning him into an enemy so that you can take it from him. That whole me versus you thing, that's that's what they call chaos. It's innumerable people all struggling to get for themselves what they need, what they desire, what they think that they're entitled to. That's chaos. They are trying to bring us into a state of chaos so that we won't support our country, and we will be, easy pickings when they decide to come over with their, great big ships full of Chinese soldiers and Pakistani army. And, these are the guys that are going to do the fighting. It's not going to be the kids that are, got their degrees and have the student loans, and these people aren't going to be fighting. We have mercenaries. We'll just pay Z or Blackwater or whatever it's called now to go out and do the fighting. And if they need some troops, we'll just hire some.
Like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Right. 70% of one of the reasons that Saudi Arabia's army ain't worth a crap is because at least 70% or higher, they won't say, of them are simply hired people from other countries. They just hire people from a bunch of other countries. They've had this happen in Yemen a number of times. So they hire some poor people from whatever, Sudan, wherever. Come on over here, I'll hire you. When those people get in a battle, they're like, hey, I dying ain't no way to make a living. They throw their guns down and run in the other direction. And it wouldn't shock me if when you start seeing new immigration bill, the game, what the new immigration bill would say. Well, if you're an undocumented from another country, but you're willing to spend a couple years in the U.S. military, because ultimately they know what I know. They know that the people who are 20 and 18 and 25 years old right now have had it up to here. And they know they're going to have a difficult time getting people that they've been screwing over them and their families for their entire lives to pick up a gun and go fight a country when they know good and well that all they want to do is knock that country over so they can steal their oil anyway. Right? They're going to have difficulty doing that. So what do? You do like Saudi Arabia. Now it's, hey, man, we got millions of potential immigrants. Tell you what, you spend 2, 4, however many years in the military and not a problem you can be. So then you end up, and that's where it won't shock me. I'm predicting that Biden's going to do some kind of immigration bill. But in that immigration bill, there'll be stuff to piss off the left and stuff to piss off the right, and all that'll be part of the game. But in that bill, the big thing I see coming is going to be, oh, you can come here for 2 years or 4 years or whatever. They'll say giving government service. They'll use some words like that sound kind of ambiguous, but it's going to be, our people here are kind of getting angry, and they're not willing to join the military enough, and they don't feel that we've got they don't believe in the mission of overthrowing various countries. And guess what? You now say all of these immigrants can come in and there's your military. Because that's what they're looking. How do we, one of the things they're looking at is how do we keep this big military when people aren't going to join it and people don't believe in the mission anymore, and they don't trust the people who are making the decisions at the Pentagon or in the White House. They're getting to a point where they don't trust these institutions and they know how corrupt they are. What do you think about my assertion that somewhere in this immigration, they'll give us a whole bunch to argue about, but somewhere in there will be the jewel that they really want that keeps their army going full of immigrants?
I tend to think of it primarily, with all of these people coming across the border, and who's going to stop them now? We'll have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that are going to come in and going to start voting. And that's where I think that the real utility of these people that are coming in over the border is for the powers that be, is to just keep themselves in office by maintaining, a voting majority. Let me mention just briefly, because this Wednesday night I'm looking forward to a new author named Chris Fogarty, who's going to be on the show and talking about his study of what's called the Irish famine, or the potato famine.
Mm-hmm.
He says, no, that's not what you call it. What you call it is the Holocaust, the Irish Holocaust. Because, and what he's documented in his book, and he's really done a great job with it, is that, hey, the Irish farmers weren't any stupider than every other farmer in the world. They knew that you can't rely on one crop.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that. And so what he did was he went and looked at all of the export records for all the ports around Ireland, and what they were, and places like the places where the livestock would be brought together for slaughter and things like that. And he documented the Irish are growing all kinds of grain. They've got sheep, they've got cattle, but the British Army, the occupation forces, were taking it all away from them and shipping the food out of Ireland, so that they weren't able to eat anything other than these potatoes. And so when this potato famine hit, and it didn't hit just Ireland, it also hit England.
Mm-hmm.
So when it hits England and the English are like, we're hungry, well, where can we get some food? Oh, I know. Let's go take it from those Irish, those bums out, those people that are taking up too much. There's too many Irish out there,
Yep.
So they decimated it. They reduced the population by, I think, something like a third or a half. Millions and millions of people starved to death. And you can drive around in West Ireland right now and see the famine graves. Well, there's a book that I kind of like. It's called How the Irish Became White. How the Irish Became White. And the theme is that, of course, we were just like any other immigrants. That I say we, my ancestors, were just like any other immigrants. They shipped us into a ghetto, and it became part of a political machine, right? You got what you got from the local, boss that handed out the goodies, and you voted for the boss and you got the goodies. And that was the way that politics was run. Well, the Civil War comes along. The incredible amount of Irish that got into the ranks, from the Irish Brigade on the north to the south, they also had divisions and divisions of Irish, that mainly from Louisiana, who came in through New Orleans, where Andy is right now. These Irish people, they didn't come over here to join a military. They didn't know there was going to be a civil war. But damn if they didn't end up fighting each other, shooting at each other, and even from time to time hollering across the line saying, hey, boyo, don't come up here. It's too bad. Don't turn around, go back, because they knew that the Irish and the other ranks were coming up. And so they would say, don't come up here. We've got too many cannons. Well, the whole point is every immigrant group is seduced into the military.
Yeah.
And that is how supposedly you get the idea that, well, if I go and serve, if I might get killed, but suppose that I don't get killed, then I've earned my way. That's how the Irish became, white, was because we joined up. We became, cannon fodder for the Civil War. Well, I don't think it worked. I don't think the Irish were accepted into the WASP society, and I put my father in exhibit number one. This is the illusion that if you come here, you're going to get into the melting pot and you're going to work your way up and you're going to become part of this American, success story, this great American capitalism. You're not. You're going to get caught up in some political machine. You're going to end up having to work for somebody that you don't like, and you're not going to make the money you think, because you're not going to have a chance to actually rise in the American system anymore. All that is taken up by the big guys who are going to say, no, we don't like people, that come from foreign countries. We'd rather have, relatives. Let's put some relatives in these, we'll make the colonels and the majors and the generals all people that have family ties to the big money, to the banks. And then we'll get a bunch of all the rest of them and just throw them in the ranks. You guys, you're company A, and you guys are company B, and you guys are company C, and you learn how to march. And the next thing you know, you're going to Afghanistan. That's what they do to the immigrants. And that's the whole, that's been the story a long time. Yeah, it's a sucker play.
Yeah. Yes. And nothing's changed today. They're doing the same thing and they're playing the same games. And what happens is think about this. And we only got a few minutes, but I'll say this. A perfect example would be the Civil War. What happened in the Civil War in the South? In the South, they had something called the 20 slave rule. What did that mean? That mean if you owned 20 or more slaves, that you didn't have to go fight, because your slaves might run away during the war. So you got to stay home. So you know who went and fought? The poor people. The poor people in the South went and fought the poor people in the North, because rich people didn't fight. They had to stop a lot of these very wealthy garment factories, because during during the Civil War, they were literally making uniforms for both sides. They were making uniforms in New York, putting them on a train and selling them to the Southerners. So the rich people were like, hey, there's a war going on. You know what? We can still trade with the rich people on the other side, and we can trade in gold or whatever, and we'll still make money. And meanwhile, the poor Southern guy, if you're a poor dirt farmer in the South and you're a white guy, right? Well, here's the problem. One of the reasons you're poor is because they have free labor, so they don't have to pay you. Slavery is free labor. So what slavery did all throughout the South was made the average white guy really, really poor. There was so much free labor. If he wanted to be a furrier and he wanted to shoe horses, sorry, every slave plantation had a dozen black furrier slaves who were trained. You want to be a blacksmith? Sorry, they had slaves that were trained to be blacksmith. You couldn't make a decent living if you were a white guy in the South, most likely, because all of the big corporations had free labor. You got screwed. So then what happens? The war starts and they're like, hey, you poor white guy, yeah, go over here and fight and get slaughtered in the war. So it's the same game. The poor person, these billionaires, if we look at it right now with the Lockheed Martins, the Raytheons, et cetera, all of these people coming into the Biden administration, straight out of think tanks, straight out of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, the same way every previous administration, the same thing, but that's the game that's played. They talk about war, they do all this crap, and they just get richer. They screw up the economy. Every time we have an economic crash, afterwards, the top 1% get richer than they were before the economic crash. They get richer when there's a war. Like you said about COVID, they get richer. Anything that happens, any disaster, any problem, if they create it, if it's natural, it doesn't matter. They always find a way to manipulate it so they can get more and we can get less. And the problem is there's a lot of people in this country that have lost everything, that don't have any less to lose. And a lot of us that may not have lost everything, and we still see what's going on, and we know, we're next. What are they going to do next? Lock people like you and I up for having different opinions, for saying the things that we say that may not be accepted in the mainstream narrative. We already know those things can happen. That can come. We hope it don't. But people are crazy if they don't think that it's possible.
Rich man's war, poor man's fight.
It's a good one. I like that.
No, it's not original. That's an old saying. And it's a rich man's war, but it's a poor man's fight. Yeah, that's that, and you said that so beautifully. And for someone of your ethnicity to say something, true about the plight of the white people of the South that didn't have money. They didn't have money before the war. They sure didn't get any money during the war, and after the war, it was really really hell. But unfortunately, they were susceptible to racism, which racism is a great way for them to be resentful and drive the now free black people out of the businesses, out of office. I mean, we had some very well respected black congressmen in the 1860s, the late 1860s, early 1870s, and then boom, it all turned back into racism again.
You got to keep the poor people fighting amongst each other. You always got to need a reason or excuse to keep them fighting amongst each other. I told you when I watched the protest over the summer and I saw people running in this direction, I saw some cops wielding, nightstick, beating somebody over the head. And I just thought to myself, you know what? The billionaires are thrilled. They're like, well, look at that. The cops, they're working class people. The people that are over there running and throwing stuff and getting hit in the head with a stick, they're working class people. Yay. The working class people are beating the crap out of each other, hating each other, tearing each other's stuff up. And we're just sitting back here they were sitting back while America was working class people were screwing themselves over every which way. They were just sitting back and making more money than they've ever made in history over like an 8-month period. Man, that was beautiful for them. Probably like watching maybe like watching MMC or something for them. They were happy.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy. I enjoyed our conversation very much, and I'm just so delighted to have these conversations with you, Garland. I didn't know that there was somebody as smart as you who agrees with basically everything I say. So you're welcome here anytime, brother.
Thank you very much. I enjoy our Monday night chat.
All right, we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon. Tomorrow morning, Harley Schlanger of LaRouche Pack organization tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Garland, you might be interested in that. Harley's a pretty smart man himself.
I've interviewed him before.
Okay, well.
Him and another guy named Speed. You know him?
Yeah, Dennis Speed.
Dennis Speed, yes. I've interviewed both of those guys. Brilliant guys. Love them.
Love it. All right. We'll see you then.
All righty.